שיעור ראשון.
Shalom everyone. Boker Tov. We're going to give a shir today. We're going to discuss today in the shir mitzvot to do with Pesach. And I've chosen to speak today about the Arba Kusot and maybe about the fifth cup if we have time. This sheet that you have in front of you is really focusing more on the fifth cup, and we'll get there. But before we get to the fifth cup, if there is such a thing, we will talk about the four cups. Everyone knows that the night of Pesach, we have a mitzvah to drink 4 cups of wine. If you would do a survey, and you would ask people on the street, why do we drink 4 cups of wine? Please don't be an uber chacham. Just tell me what comes to your mind. Most people would answer what?
Lashonot Geula.
Arba Lashonot Shel Geula. That is, I did a survey for years, and this is 98% of the people. That is their, not joking, but I didn't make a survey about this, but I'm sure that that's what would come out. People would say, the 4 Lashonot of Geula. If you look in front of you, in the middle of the page, you'll see in Sefer Shmot, Perek Vav, I had these Lashonot of Geula highlighted. Ve'otzeti, V'itzalti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti, V'datem, V'heveti. Arba Lashonot Geula. Well, I'm not counting so well, but maybe 6, maybe 5, maybe 4. And of course, when you read these psukim, the first thing that comes to your mind is 4 cups of wine. Right? You're staring at them. Right? What else is there to understand from these psukim than that you have to drink 4 cups of wine? What I'm trying to say is that there is really there's no connection between Lashonot of Geula to the mitzvah of drinking cups of wine. At least there is no pshat connection. There is nothing that would indicate after you read the psukim that you have to drink 4 cups of wine. First of all, it's not so clear that there are 4 Lashonot of Geula. Second of all, why drinking wine? If you want to celebrate the 4 Lashonot of Geula, maybe you should, jump up 4 times in the air. Maybe you should clap your hands 4 times. Maybe you should have 4 types of meat. I don't know. What is the connection? So it seems to me that, as I'll soon prove, that this is a drasha, and sharei drasha lo nina'alu. It's a nice drasha, but there's no question that it doesn't start. The mitzvah to drink 4 cups of wine doesn't start from the psukim. It starts from somewhere more basic. And where is that place? And what is that from? So I'm not going to teach now. There's a very famous griz, a beautiful griz, Rabbi Velvel, the Brisker Rav, has a very well-known, I would say, in the Yeshiva world piece, how he explains that the Gemara's girsa and the Rambam's girsa was different when it comes to the 4 cups of wine, and he reaches the following conclusion. He reaches the conclusion that in the mitzvah of Arba Kosot, there are 2 separate mitzvot. One mitzvah is to have 4 cups of wine on 4 separate mitzvot. Besides that mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to feel as a free person, which we celebrate by drinking the wine. I'll show you where this is almost pshat in the Gemara. You don't have this in front of you, but in the Gemara Masechet Pesachim, the Gemara asks a very strange question. It's very strange, and I'm sure people who learn Masechet Pesachim are aware of this strange sugya. The Gemara talks about how is it possible that Chachamim made a takana to drink 4 cups of wine. Zugot, the idea of couples is a very dangerous idea, says the Gemara. You're not allowed to eat or drink things in pairs. Why not? Is there anybody here who understands Kabbalah? There is something in the Kabbalah, in the mystics, that doing things in pairs is dangerous.
Getting married?
Now, I don't understand this Gemara. The Gemara goes on there's a whole sugya in Masechet Pesachim. There's 2 or 3 daf here in the middle of the Masechet that talk about the danger. Multiple gods could be, okay, Seder. I'm not going to go into it right now, but the Gemara says, how can it be that we do this? So one answer is, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Kra, Leil Shimurim. The night of Pesach, we all know the expression, is a Leil Shimurim. God protects you that night from the devils, from the demons. That's what the Gemara says. It's a special protection that we have from Zugot, the night of Pesach. That's one answer. I don't understand that answer so well either, I have to admit. However, Ravina Amar, you're wrong. He says, Arba'a kasei tiknu rabanan derech cherut kol chad vechad mitzvah be'apei nafsho. He says, you got it wrong. It's not 2 pairs of cups. Rather, it is 4 separate cups of wine. By the way, the nafkamina of that, of course, is machloket Shulchan Aruch and Ramah. If we make 4 brachot, separate brachot. I don't know, is everyone Ashkenazi here? Is any Sephardi here? Do you have a Sephardi here? Okay. Do you remember how many brachot you make in the 4 cups of wine? Sephardim theoretically should make only 2 brachot on the 4 cups of wine. Ashkenazi make 4. Because every mitzvah, every cup is a mitzvah by itself. And he says, derech cherut. It was made to feel free. Now let's explain what that means. What are the 4 mitzvot that we do with the 4 cups of wine? Very simple. The first mitzvah is Kiddush. Second mitzvah is Magid. Third mitzvah, benching. Fourth mitzvah, Hallel. There are 4 mitzvot that we perform the night of Pesach, and Chachamim told us that they should be done on a cup of wine. Forget the drasha, we'll get back to the drasha of Geula. But right now, the pshat is, and I think it's such a simple pshat is, that it began with this idea. Chachamim said, the night of Pesach, there are a lot of mitzvot for us to do. We have to eat matzah, we have to eat maror, and we have to say a lot of things. The mitzvot of Pesach are all about the mouth, either eating or speaking. That's why Jews love Pesach, right? Your mouth is working overtime, eating and speaking. So the mitzvot that we have to do with our mouth, when it comes to speaking, Kiddush, Magid, benching, and Hallel, Chachamim said they have to be done on a cup of wine. Why? Well, let's ask a better question. Why do we have mitzvot that are done in a cup of wine? Is there any mitzvot that has to be done in a cup of wine? What? Kiddush. So Kiddush, okay.
Kiddush doesn't have to be
Kiddush
done
doesn't have to be in a cup of wine.
And red wine.
So what wine that's a little bit let's go back to Kiddush. Kiddush is a mitzvah d'oraita on Shabbat to make Kiddush. Where does it say in the Torah that has to be done in a cup of wine? It doesn't. There is an opinion somewhere in the Gemara in Nazir or Tosfot that says Kiddush might be d'oraita. We don't go by that. It is clear, we paskin, wine on Shabbat for Kiddush is d'Rabbanan. In fact, when we go to shul Friday night, and we come from shul, we fulfilled Kiddush d'oraita. How? The nusach of Kiddush is said in Shemona Esrei, Friday night. That's what created a very famous Machlokes Achronim between the Rabbi Akiva Eiger and the Rabbi Yehuda. If a woman doesn't daven Mariv and a man daven Mariv, so now he's chayav d'Rabbanan because he didn't make Kiddush yet on a cup of wine. She's chayav d'oraita because she didn't daven yet. Can he be motzi her? It's a very famous question. We pass on that you can. It's not a problem. But it's a machloket.
The color is not being funny. The white wine and red wine. We have a tradition of only red wine. But is
not important.
Ever been discussed?
Yeah, people say red is nice because it's whatever, but you don't have to. It's not a.
It's only on Pesach.
Yeah.
It's only on Pesach.
For Pesach, people say you should have red wine, but
on Shabbat you make Kiddush on liquor.
well, that's a different question, which I'm not going to go into right now. That's Shabbos morning, and even then it's questionable. Friday night, we don't do that. Friday night, we make only on wine because at night it's d'oraita.
But it's a very holy place that produces excellent wine. That's done by my grandson.
Okay, so I know I was there. I was there. You have little commercials here. Okay, the Seder. Going back. So on Shabbat we make Kiddush on wine, even though wine is the Rabbanan. Why? Why do Chachamim say to make Kiddush on wine? Oh, so wine is chashivut. Wine is an important drink, so it somehow creates an importance. Where else do we have a cup of wine in halacha? Weddings. Do you have to have a cup of wine for a wedding? No. Do you know the Rambam's language? The Rambam says, look inside. The Rambam says, if you happen to have wine, bring it to the wedding. Why? By the way, Sheva Brachas is more important to have wine than the Erusin, than the Kiddushin. We have a cup of wine. We make up 2 cups of wine for weddings. We have a cup of wine for the Erusin, and then we fill it up again for the Nisuin. The Rambam says for the Erusin you don't really need it. For the Nisuin you need it more. Why do we have it both in Sheva Brachas and in the Erusin? The answer is, again, importance, chashivut. It creates a bit of an important status to the event. Where else? Brit Milah, Pidyon Haben. These are all mitzvot that we add a cup of wine to the process, to the ceremony. Why? So one can say that what do most of these have in common? That it's a simcha. Pidyon Haben, Brit Milah, a wedding, wine makes us happy. Could be that that's part of it. Another way of looking at it, as I just suggested, is it gives it chashivut, importance. And it could be that the importance is only in cases when there's no ma'aseh. There's no mitzvah of an action. When we blow shofar, when we shake lulav, when we eat matzah, we have a mitzvah that we perform an act with. When we have mitzvot that we just speak and talk, like benching, like kiddush, could be that Chachamim wanted to somehow manifestate, put the words onto something, into something physical, something that we should on a cup of wine. Yeah.
Brit Milah has an action.
So I said Brit Milah, weddings could be because of simcha element. That's what I just said. And other mitzvot I said, like kiddush and like benching, perhaps the reason for them was to give them importance because there's no ma'aseh. Could be.
There's chashivut.
So chashivut, that's what I said. Chashivut gives it importance. So if that's really true, let's go through the 4 mitzvot that we have the night of Pesach again. Kiddush, Friday. Kiddush is Kiddush. That's simple. We make Kiddush every Yom Tov, every Friday night. That's simple, a cup of wine. Why Magid? Why do we have a cup of wine and Magid? So, if you open up, you don't have this in front of you, but if you would open the Rambam in the 7th parak of Ichot Chametz U'Matzah, I want you to listen please very carefully. מצוות עשה של תורה לספר בניסים ונפלאות שנעשו לאבותינו בליל 15 בניסן. What mitzvah is that? That's Magid. The mitzvah of Sipur Yitzat Mitzrayim. Now, I do this all the time, and it's fine. Don't. What is a pasuk that the Rambam will quote now? What pasuk would you quote?
V'higata levincha.
V'higata levincha, right?
No, I guess no.
What pasuk would you bring for the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzat Mitzrayim? Listen carefully. He says, Shne'emar zach. By the way, that's why I don't bring it on the sheet. Because if I had it on the sheet, you would read this without even thinking twice, because it says it. But because I stopped, and you don't have it in front of you, and I'm asking you to guess, you all guessed wrong. Okay? So now let's read it. Shne'emar zachor et hayom hazeh asher yitzatem mimitzrayim.
That's what I was going to say.
But you have to do that every day.
Oh! The gentleman here says, wait a second, why is the Rambam quoting a pasuk with the verb zachor, while we know that there is a mitzvah every day of the year to remember Yitzat Mitzrayim? What's that pasuk? Yes, that we. What's the pasuk that teaches us that every day of our life we have to remember Yitzat Mitzrayim? Come on, we say in the Haggadah. Go back. Leman tizkor et yom tzetcha meretz Mitzrayim. Kol yemei chayecha. Remember Rosh ben Azariah, right? Kol comes to add not only in the daytime but also at the nighttime. Twice a day there's a mitzvah to remind us of. And the verb is Leman Tizko. My Abba Alav Shalom used to begin his Seder every year with this question. Every year. And I had to play as if I never heard it before for all our guests. And the question was, there's a mitzvah tonight to tell the story of Yitzhak Mitzrayim, but wait a second, every day of the year we have that mitzvah. What is special tonight, the night of Pesach? In other words, what's the difference between the mitzvah of Sipur and the mitzvah of Zechira? Now this question was asked by the Minchas Chinuch hundreds of years ago, and Reb Chaim of Brisk asked this question, and together there might be a list of 7, 8 answers. What is the difference between Zechira and Sipur? My father would go around the table, and every guest would have to give another difference between Zechira and Sipur. It was tough by us. You had to earn your matzah by us. Okay? So before I mention that, can anyone help me out? What's the difference between Zechira every day of the year to Sipur?
Wine.
What?
Wine.
Wine.
You don't drink wine
No.
every time.
Oh yeah, but I just said that's not part of the idea of what Zechira is, right? That's not how maybe we'll get there. You're right. In a second, I'll get back to your answer a little bit differently.
Well, one
Yes?
you have to say, the other you
Yes,
just
I
have
will.
to
Zechira
think.
is in your mind,
You have to think.
right? Sipur is you have to say. What else? Sipur is between two people.
No.
You have to tell a story. Afilu kulanu chachamin. Kulanu yidim tatorah kula. Right? We have to still have a discussion. Sipur is Zechira is to myself. What else? Zechira is a second. You remember. That's it. I remember. I did the mitzvah. Sipur, the more, the merrier. In other words, what do we say that? How do we say that? Kol hamarbeh.
Mishubach.
That's exactly that's what we're saying. Kol hamarbeh, raise mishubach. With Zechira, there's no room to be marbeh. There's no idea to be marbeh. Why should I remember more? I remembered. Sipur, the more you detail the story, the more you add, the more you elaborate, you're doing the mitzvah the better way. What else is the difference?
Seaport doesn't have to be the same thing. One's part of seaport to be A, another B, another C.
They're different narratives, you're saying. That's very politically correct right now in the 21st century, right? The Egyptians' narrative, our narrative, right? They're different sipurim. Okay, you can tell a sipur differently. Sipur has a format. Sipur has structure. How do you start a story? Once upon a time. How do you end the story?
All's well that ends well.
Right. Or at the end, okay? But that's exactly what the Gemara asks. What does the Gemara say? Matchil b'gnut u'musayim b'shvach. And then the Gemara says, wait a second, which gnut? Is it gnut physical?
It's yes, Mitzrayim.
Avadim ayinu lefer b'Mitzrayim, or is it spiritual, which is mitchila avdei avodah zarah? It's a machloket. And how do we end? Kirvan, I'm calling this now. The Gemara discusses how we end. Why is the Gemara discussing how we begin, how we end? Because the Gemara is saying there's a way to tell a story, and you have to know how to tell a story. There's a beginning, there's an end, there's a way to do it. What else? And this goes back to what you said, but I'll explain a bit better. If that's okay. Zechira is done in your mind, is done in a second. Sipur requires props. When you have props, you tell the story better. But it's more than props. It's about acting out the story. Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo. You are the story. You are living. You are dramatizing the story. You're not just remembering something that happened. You are living the story. And how do you do that? A, by going through the motions of feeling that you're left Egypt. And B, by using the matzah, the maror, and the wine. By using all these props, we are reacting and we are connecting to Yetziat Mitzrayim. We are trying to relive the idea, right? This is a very famous idea in Judaism. We don't live the past. We live the past in the present. We, on Shavuot, receive the Torah that night. In Sukkot, we sit in the Sukkah now. On Shofar, we blow the Shofar of what it means to us now. In Yom Kippur, we don't talk about how Moshe came down from the Luchot and God and forgave the Jewish people. He's forgiving us now. Judaism is not about the past, it's about reacting the historical events in our days. We are leaving Egypt. We are receiving the Torah. We are sitting in the Sukkah. It's our story that we are going through right now. That's the main difference between the mitzvah of Zechira, that we have to act it out. And the wine, therefore, the wine is part of the feeling of cherut, as we spoke about before. We are celebrating our freedom. What does it mean to be a free person? To be able to lie on our couch with a glass of wine. We are proving to ourselves and to the world that we are free people and what it means to be free. But going back to the Rambam messed it up a little bit, right? The Rambam messed it up because he should have really said, Shene'emar v'higat levincha. Why does the Rambam mention Zechira again in the context of Sipur? So maybe this will be the answer. The Rambam continues and says, I'll read again, Shene'emar zachor et hayom hazeh asher yitzatem miMitzrayim, and he adds, Kimo shene'emar zachor et yom haShabbat. Why does the Rambam add those words?
There's a holiness.
Zachor et hayom yitzatem miMitzrayim, as it says, zachor dem haShabbat. Says the Or Sameach on this Rambam. I'll tell you why. Because the Rambam is teaching us that the same way, when it says on Shabbat, Zachor et Shabbat Kadesho, how do we do that?
Yeah.
On a cup of wine. So when the Torah says Zachor Tayom Sipur, it also has to be done on a cup of wine.
Like a Gezer
So
Shabbos.
Magid is done on a cup of wine, like Shabbos is done on a cup of wine. And you might add a deeper understanding. What is the real Kiddush of the night of Pesach? Magid. This is its own Kiddush. We have as if two Kiddushes the night of Pesach. We have the regular Kiddush for Yom Tov, and the second Kiddush, which is Magid, is parallel to Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. It's a special Kiddush as if of Pesach. That's what Magid is. By the way, if what I'm saying is true, I hope it is, then the second cup is done on a cup of wine like Kiddush. The Briskers, it says in the Brisker Agada somewhere, that they took this very seriously, that if you did Magid, the whole Magid on a cup of wine, and at the end of your Magid, the wine spilled, like it does at every Jewish table at some point, someone spills the wine, that you have to go back to the beginning of Magid.
No.
Because the mitzvah is to say the Haggadah on a cup of wine, like Kiddush. It's your Kiddush now. So you have to make sure it doesn't spill. That's your cup of wine. So now I understand. Yes?
According to what you just said, we should do two Kiddushes on Shabbos. One for Kiddush for Shabbos and one for Zachor.
So we said that the Zachor every day is only to remember. The Zachor of the night of Pesach is a special Zachor. It's a mitzvah of Sipur. It's not just to remember, it's part of the mitzvah to tell the story. Why does the Rambam here only quote the word Zachor? I think because he wanted to compare it to Shabbos. But to be fair, we do have V'higat levincha also in the Torah. And the Rambam will bring that pasuk also later on. So we established why the first mitzvah is on Kiddush, the cup of wine. The second cup of wine is Magid. What's the third cup of wine? Benching. That's simple. We today, most of us, don't make benching on wine. Some people on Shabbos, I don't know if some people here are makbid on Shabbos to have a cup of wine. Originally, benching was supposed to be done always on a cup of wine. Whenever you bench, Shulchan Aruch says, take a cup of wine. In fact, the halachot of what a Kiddush cup is supposed to be like is not in the Ilchot Kiddush, it's in the Ilchot Birkat HaMazon. Because it comes up first in Shulchan Aruch. If you want to learn the halachas of what a Kiddush cup has to be, you don't look it up in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph in Ilchot Kiddush and Orach Chaim. You look it up much earlier in Orach Chaim of benching. Because a Kiddush cup, the idea of having a cup to do a mitzvah is mentioned first in Birkat HaMazon. We don't do that today, for whatever reason. But the night of Pesach we do. So that's not a big Kiddush. Benching is on a cup of wine. What's the fourth cup? Challah. Why do we say Challah on a cup of wine?
It enhances the experience.
Okay, that's nice. Someone just said about him. The Gemara says, Ein shira ela alayayin. In the Beis Hamikdash, When they said Hallel, when they poured the wine over the Mizbeach, they said Hallel. Wine is Simcha. When we say the Hallel, we have to say it Besimcha Atzuma, with great happiness. This is already a Gemara idea. We didn't make it up. It's already, it's a Beis HaMikdash idea. So we have 4 cups of wine for the 4 mitzvot. Every mitzvah is a mitzvah of itself. That's how we got to the number 4. At the same time, Chachamim said, you know what we gained from this? We gained the idea of derech chirut. We gained that we celebrate our freedom. So the Gemara says, according to the Rambam, I'll give you a scenario where a person might do the 4 cups of wine, half of the mitzvah, and half of the mitzvah he won't be doing it. What's the case? The Gemara says, we don't do this today, but the Gemara says you can't drink wine straight. The Gemara always added water. In the Gemara times they added water. It's called yain mazug. Mazug doesn't mean poured, it means to pour water. Yain mazug is what they used to do in the time of the Gemara. And the Gemara says if a person drinks 4 cups of wine, that's not mazug. So the Gemara says, Yatsa yedei arba kosot, aval lo yatsa derech chirut. There are 2 halachas here. So you did 4 cups of wine, but you didn't keep the mitzvah feeling of being free. Why? Because free people apparently don't drink plain wine. However, the Gemara says, what happens if a person takes a good wine, and drinks them, takes 4 cups, and takes 4 shots, one after the other, without splitting them. The Gemara says, Yatsa yedei chirut, aval lo yatsa yedei arba kosot. Right? So you see, says the Griz, Rav Vilvel says, you see, there are 2 halachas here. You have to drink 4 cups as 4 separate mitzvot, and by doing it, you're mekayim the mitzvah of derech chirut. This is how we got to 4. Come along, the darshanim, sharei drashot lo ninalu, and start saying, oh, you know why 4? Why 4? I have a sheet here, don't I? Where's my sheet? Oh, thank you. Why 4? So I actually didn't bring it here. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll get to my sheet. Don't worry. The Yerushalmi says because of 4 cups of wine that mentioned by Paro. There's 4 cups of wine in Paro in Egypt with Yosef, with Sarah Mashkim. There's a whole list. If you look in the Yerushalmi and in the Gemara, you'll see so many drushas. Why 4? By the way, we did that also at night of Pesach, right? Arba miyodea, chamisha miyodea. If we would have chamesh kosot, you don't think they would say, "Oh, keneged chamisha chumashi Torah"? Meaning, the egg and the chicken here is very simple. What came first? It's for sure. It's obvious that first came the 4 mitzvahs, and now we have a drasha. However, it's very stuck in our mind this idea of arba lishnot of geula. That became the more famous drasha. That the number 4. By the way, right? There are other 4 things in the Haggadah. Why are there 4 sons in the Haggadah? Why are there 4 questions in Manishtana? The number 4 is a motif, is a theme in the Seder night. For some reason, we got really stuck on the Arba Lishnot of Geula. However, as we'll soon see, there is a 5th cup. If you look in your source sheet, you'll see that the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, Revi'i Gomer Alav et Halel, like we explained. The Hallel, the night of Pesach, is said over the 4th cup. Ve'omer Halel Gadol, Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. Ma ze Halel Gadol? Hodu Hashem ki tov, ki olam chasdo. Ki olam chasdo. Unlike regular Hallel, which is called Halel HaMitzri. Right? We call it Halel HaMitzri. Our regular Hallel is called Halel HaMitzri, the Egyptian Hallel, because that's what we mentioned Tzat Mitzrayim. Halel HaGadol is what we say, Hodu Hashem ki tov, ki olam chasdo. That long list. Rabbi Tarfon says, in the Gemara at least it says, you must say Halel HaGadol afterwards. However, in the Rif had a different girsa. In the Rif it says, Chamishi Omer Alav Halel HaGadol Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. The Rif had a different manuscript in front of him, in which Rabbi Tarfon, already a Tana, comes to add a 5th cup. He says, you have to say Hallel Gadol on a cup of wine, not just Hallel HaMitzri. Tosfot was aware of this girsa, and you can see in front of you, Tosfot says, Revi'i Garsinan velo Chamishi. Says there is no Chamishi, says Tosfot. So we have a machloket between Ashkenaz and Sfard, perhaps, the Rif, who lived in Morocco, who was the head of the Spanish Jewry at the next generation of Spanish rabbis, while Tosfot in Ashkenaz said, we don't have this idea of 5. If you look in the Ran, though, in front of you, you'll see that it's not so simple. Says the Ran, Vadai ki divrei haGeonim ikar. The arba kosot chova v'chamishi reshut. So here we have a compromise. There is no 5th cup that you have to drink, but it's reshut. The Ran brings this idea that the 5th cup is an optional cup already. This is already in the Rishonim. V'im ratza lishtot omer alav halal gadol. It says it's an optional if you're interested to say the great Hallel on it. One can.
So can you deduce from this that if you drink 9 cups,
9 cups?
of 4 and 5 together?
No, this is the
I'll
5th
tell you
cup.
where to buy it.
Inami.
When do we drink the 4th cup?
The 4th cup is Hallel. And then after Hallel, he says, you say Hallel Hagadol on the 5th cup. 2 Hallel. Hallel HaMitzri, Hallel Hagadol. Inami, another option, the Ran says, Mitzvah min ha-muvchar lishtot kos chamishi v'lomar alav Hallel Hagadol. Meaning he says, the one option was that it's optional. If you want to, you can. The other one is saying more. It's a good mitzvah to do that. You should. Meaning, I'm encouraging you. It's a real good mitzvah to have a 5th cup and say Hallel Gadol. Now, but it makes sense that if you understand that Hallel Gadol is its own as if Hallel. So just like we said Hallel on a kos, just like we benched on a kos, if we understand that Hallel Gadol is a special, unique, additional Hallel for the night of Pesach, then it makes sense that this should also require its own cup of wine, because that will really highlight the Hallel Gadol. What did we say until now? Why do we say a cup of wine? Because a cup of wine gives status to what we're doing. It's chashivut. So Rabbi Tarfon says Hallel Gadol is a very important Hallel. So if we don't do it by itself, a cup of wine, it loses its uniqueness. I want to highlight Hallel Gadol. Do it on a cup of wine. And the Ran really says, perhaps you should. And look what he says now. V'kach matin divrei harambam. The Rambam in Ilchot Chametz u'Matzah really teaches us that you should pour a 5th cup. Mozgin kos chamishi. The Rambam says Mozgin kos chamishi. But and you say Hallel Gadol. But what's the problem with that? But the Rambam doesn't say you should drink it. It says Mozgin. You pour it. You don't drink it.
That's where Kos Eliyahu comes.
Oh, we'll get to Kos Eliyahu in a second. So we have certain opinions in the Rishonim that say we should pour it, and we even found in the Ran opinions that say you should drink it and say Hallel Gadol. So what's the halacha? So look in front of you. So the Mishnah Brura for us Ashkenazim, he says v'noagim be'elu hamedinot limzog kos echad yoter ma'mesubin vekorin oto kos shel Eliyahu. Why? Where did that come from? We just skipped, I agree, we skipped like 800 years between the Ran, 600 years between the Ran and the Mishnah Brura. What happened in those 600 years that suddenly this halacha of having the 5th cup became a kos shel Eliyahu? So there's a well-known gra about this. Rabbi Sachs in his Haggadah, by the way, explains this gra very nicely. I'll just say it really quickly. We have machloket, Rishonim. Should you have a 5th cup or not? Like any other machloket, we need a psak, but they're different opinions. What do we do? What do we Jews do when we don't know what to do? So one of the options is we do everything, right? We do both options, right? When we have a machloket, for example, most people's mezuzahs, how are they? How are people's mezuzahs? Slanted. Why? Because we live in the Middle East and everything is slanted, right? Your house is probably slanted, okay? But seriously, why do we do our mezuzahs slanted? By the way, my house, my mezuzahs are standing straight. Just letting you know. Come to my house, they're standing straight. Most people, my hand's crooked. Yeah, correct. It depends. It's like people who have their tefillin crooked. It's because their nose sometimes, not their head, right? It's the way they're standing. Anyway, why do we put the mezuzah crooked? It's a machloket, compromise. Some people say a mezuzah should be like this. Some people say it should be like this. So we do like this. We make everyone happy.
Or everybody unhappy.
Or everyone unhappy. It depends. That's the half a cup of, I don't want to go into therapy right now.
Everybody's wrong.
Everyone is wrong, everyone is right? Sometimes we do both. If we can do both, we do both. For example, Bittul Chametz. Bittul Chametz. How does Bittul Chametz work? It's a very famous machloket. Bittul Chametz can either mean that I'm annulling the Chametz. Somehow, in my mind, I can turn Chametz into dust. It's a big chiddush. How that works, not now. Or, it's not such a big chiddush. All Bittul is what? Hesker. What's Hesker? Ownerless. I'm not, the Chametz is still Chametz. I'm not its owner anymore. That's the machloket Rishonim between Tosfot and other Rishonim, between the Meiri, between the Rambam, the Ramban, Rashi. How does Bittul work? So what do we do? Who do we go by? When all of us do Bittul, what do you guys have in your mind? That we're annulling the Chametz or that we're masker the Chametz? What do? We do both. Next time you look at the Nusach, Kol Chamira v'Chamia De'iga B'Shuti Livtel v'Yek'afra De'ara V'Levei Hefker. In the Nusach, most Nusachs have both Shitot of Rishonim. We want to cover ourselves. We're not sure. So many times when we have machloket, we do both. But sometimes we do teko. What's teko mean?
We don't know.
Teko in Aramaic means stand. Teko, ta'amod, muki, okimta. It's an Aramaic word for stand. Don't go anywhere. Stay put. I don't know what to do. I don't have an answer. People like to create an acronym for the word teko. Tishbi, Yitaretz, Kushiot, Ubayot is an idea that Eliyahu HaNavi, Tishbi, in the future will solve all our problems. Where anyone doing Daf Yomi now, just now we're doing Elim Mitzias, and Elim Mitzias we have the idea Munach at Shavo Eliyahu. Does anyone have a bag, a Munach bag? I have a bag in my house of lost and found things that I found. It's my Eliyahu bag. No one ever claimed it, so I have it till Eliyahu comes, and then I'll be able to give it to the right owner, right? So we have this idea that Eliyahu Hanavi will come and tell us what the Kohanim, he'll tell us where the build Beis Hamikdash, he'll tell us, there's a famous, it's actually in the Brisker Haggadah, it says, it's not a joke. It says, the Brisker Haggadah asks, how can we believe that Mashiach will come any day? Doesn't make sense. Because it says that 3 days before the coming of the Mashiach, Eliyahu will come and tell us in 3 days Mashiach is coming. So all we have to believe is that Mashiach will come in at least 3 days from now, not now. So why do we say any given moment Mashiach will come? It's not true. At any given moment plus 3. So the Brisker Haggadah says, it's a great question. When Eliyahu comes, we'll ask him that. Right? That's what it said. It's not a joke. They don't joke, these guys. They don't joke. But it actually is printed, that idea. So this idea of Eliyahu is a very profound idea in Judaism that helps. So some people say, you have machloket. Should you drink the first cup of wine? Machloket. So what do? Kosher Eliyahu. Eliyahu will come. He'll tell us what to do with the cup of wine, the fifth cup of wine. He'll drink it. He won't drink it. He'll tell us. But right now, because I don't know what to do, it's Eliyahu.
Are you supposed to make Kiddush on that the next day, or is that just...
Some people have minhagim to do that, ask him to throw it. I pour it back into my bottle of wine. I don't know. Right?
Yeah, because
Eliyahu should be poured after the Halal before Halal.
Yeah.
We're pouring the
Yeah.
fifth cup.
I mean, according to this. What?
We're pouring the fifth cup before the fourth cup.
before the fifth, before the...
No, we're pouring the fifth cup before the
Oh,
fourth
before
cup.
the fourth. Okay. Could be. Nachon. So this is one pshat. However, there's another famous pshat, and already in the Rishonim this is brought down, in the Ravid. The Ravid says, the Ravid was very traditional, just like we are. And he said, you're right, you know what, the Arba, L'Dishonot of Geula, are a real thing. And the fifth Lashon is Ve'eveti. And why do we have a fifth cup? For the fifth Lashon of Ve'eveti. And that didn't happen yet. So for that cup, for that verb of that one day we will be redeemed, we put a cup of wine on the side. I'll just tell you that the Netziv of Volozhin, which you don't have here on your sheet, says the word Vida'atem is the real fifth cup. And he says that's why it's Reshut, because not everyone can recognize what Vida'atem means. To recognize that Kosh Baruch Hu is our God, Vida'atem Keni Hashem, that is a Reshut for people that feel that they can reach that level of Da'at Hashem. So he has a whole thing about this.
All that Hashem, this is what Hashem does. This is
Nachon.
what Klal is.
Oh, yes, okay, Nachon. So you can we'll get there in a second. So these are the two different classic reasons why Kosher Eliyahu became associated with Eliyahu. Either because it's like Eliyahu will tell us what to do in the future, or because this cup somehow is a symbol for the future of the Ve'eveti. If you look at the end of the source sheet, Rav Goren has a different angle to this. Rav Goren says, a little bit that was said now, what's the main difference between the four Lishonot and Ve'eveti? He said all the first four are totally dependent upon God. While Ve'eveti, he says, is also depending upon us. And he says the fifth cup of Ve'eveti is about Am Yisrael coming back to Eretz Yisrael and participating in the Geula, not just in a passive way, but in an active way. And he says this is taking away a little bit the responsibility from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and also putting it on us. He has a whole article about this. And then he says, due to the fact that we have, in our generation, we have seen much of this happen, Rav Goren says, today it's a mitzvah to drink the fifth cup. And today you should not just pour it, but drink it. And this is also very well known, associated with Rav Kasher. I'm sure you heard of Rav Kasher. Rav Kasher, here. I just saw, this is Rav Kasher's life work, the Torah Shlema. Rav Kasher was a huge Talmid Chacham who was also a real big Zionist, like really big Zionist. He wrote many Sfarim. He was a Goyen. He was a very, 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 very smart person, very clever person. And amongst other things, he wrote, and
You can lose your charge there.
Yeah, I just a mistake for some reason. I don't know. When I want to, I can't turn on my flashlight, and it just went on now. Here, there we go. I took a picture of Rav Kasher's idea. Here it is. Rav Kasher has a Haggadah called Haggadah Shlema, and in it he says the following: Hinei bizmanenu shezachinu lirot chasdei Hashem yitbarach v'yishuato aleinu ba'akamat medinat Yisrael she'atchalta degeula v'yishua migalut Edom v'kiyum havtachat ve'heveti etchem el haaretz asher nasati את ידי לתת אותה לאברהם, טוב ויפה לקיים מצווה מן המובחר בשתיית כוס חמישי, שהוא נגד והבאתי, ולומר עליו הלל הגדול. And there are testimonies that some people actually do this. I don't know what you do in your house. You can do what you want. But there are some people that took this very seriously and really argued that for 2,000 years, Jews poured that cup and left it because Eliyahu and Mashiach in the future, and today that we have witnessed the return of the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael, we should drink it. Why did I choose this topic this year before Pesach? I'll tell you why. Because I believe that this year the fifth cup has, I would say, a lot of it. I would say there's a lot of emotions going in the fifth cup this year more than ever. A lot of people have this idea of having some stores you can see around Israel have a chair that they leave for the hostages. Right? We have this idea already from the Churban Beit HaMikdash to leave a place at the table that's waiting for Mashiach. And we have this idea today. One of the exhibitions in Kikar HaChatufim was a table, an empty table.
All set.
Right? Empty chairs, empty tables, like the Les Mis song. And I feel that this year, the kosher Eliyahu that we pour and we don't drink should also be somehow a reminder for those this year who are not making it to the Seder table. This is a famous idea that people talk about, how the fifth cup might be some kind of, I have it on the sheet, by the way, I wrote it, you can read it afterwards. It's associated with the Chabad, with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said that we must remember that the four boys, the four sons come to the table, at least they come to the table. But there's also a fifth son that doesn't make it to the Shabbos table. He's out there somewhere. And Na'im hadvarim lemisha amaram. However, this year I think it's not just about the person who's far from us spiritually, but far from us physically. That they can't sit at a Pesach table because they're in captivity. And at the same time, this cup symbolizes that we return to Eretz Yisrael. It also puts things in perspective. I think that's the battle that we all are going through the past few weeks and months, is how do we live this kind of dissonance between living in a Medina, living in a country where we have, for the first time in thousands of years, we can protect and defend ourselves, at the same time, living in a time when, unfortunately, it's not exactly happening the way we wanted to. How do we live the balance between those two narratives? I think to me, that sums up for myself what we're going through the past few months. Those of us who believe in the state and the importance of the state, that are proud of the state, that are proud of having an army, at the same time realize that we're far from an ideal situation, that there's a lot of problems, and that our troubles are far from over. I think that the fifth cup somehow, both ideas of the fifth cup symbolizes very much the mixed feelings that we have coming to the Seder this year, and that's really what I wanted to share with you. I think that it's important to remember that with all our tzaras that we have, we Baruch Hashem do have a Medina, we do have a tzava. You know, Pesach is all about freedom, and how important freedom is. There were. I just spoke to my students about this yesterday. I said to them, in the Haggadah, the Haggadah mentions different historical events that, according to tradition, happened at Pesach. One of those piyutim that everyone's asleep at the end of Pesach, right? Mentions Vayi b'chatzi halayla, that it mentions historical events. What are they? Anyone? What happened historically on Pesach night? Achashverosh. The story of Purim actually physically, historically happens on Pesach. That's correct. What else happens on Pesach? Sancheriv. Very good. Sancheriv and Chizkiyahu HaMelech happens on Pesach. What else? According to Rashi, Lot and the Malachim in Sodom happens on Pesach. Why? That's a very clear and simple connection to Pesach. They give him out. Why? It's very simple. It's a story of Pesach again. It's the same exact story. There are people living in Sodom. Sodom is Mitzrayim. It's very simple. Sodom and Mitzrayim both have a Nile, both have a Jordan River. They are far from God. God comes and says, I want to destroy the whole place. Those who go into the house and lock the door will be saved. And it has to be done b'chipazon, v'yitmahama, v'lo yichlu yitmahamea. A lot of connection between both stories. Happened on... In modern times, however, there are two other very important historical events that happen on Pesach night. One of them is not modern, so modern, but one of them is Mitzada. If you open up Josephus, according to Josephus, the story of Masada happened the night of Pesach. And of course, the War Seder rebellion began the night of Pesach. That's why Yom HaShoah, that we commemorate, the reason why we commemorate Yom HaShoah in Israel and Kav Zayin bin Nisan, because that's the closest date that they could do it to Pesach, because they wanted to commemorate the beginning of the War Seder rebellion. And I think that it's not a coincidence, because both in Masada and in War Seder, the heroism and bravery of the Jews knew where it was going. It was going to death. And I think that our perspective today, Baruch Hashem, is that even when we have people dying and being killed, we know they're doing it for life. They're doing it for others. They're doing it for the country, for the people, for the nation that is alive. And that's a very big difference in Jewish history. And that perspective must be celebrated, must be commemorated. That, I think, is part of the kind of mixed motions and feelings that we have. And perhaps the fifth cup really is the cup that somehow symbolizes those mixed feelings. Veheveti, but maybe we shouldn't drink it yet.
What do you do with it? So what?
Leave it on the table. Yes?
Why doesn't he drink half fifth cup?
If you want to, go ahead. Start a minute.
Well, the trade is what you're saying.
Okay, if that's what you feel.
Half good, half not.
If that's what you feel, I think the Rishonim and Achronim say you could do what you want about the cost. Some say you drink it, some say you know. The minhag is to pour it. I don't know many people that drink it, but Rav Goren, Rav Kasher, they did. So if you want to, go ahead. It's up to you. I just want to talk about the symbolic idea of the fifth cup, especially this year. Yes, Vakasha.
Getting back to the question of Yain Mazuk. The wine that we drink, does it count as Yain Mazuk? Or?
Yeah, we don't mix water with wine. The way we make it today is considered to be it's diluted enough. Yeah, it's yeah. The process is different. I'm not a big I'm not a maven in this so much. So ask someone that knows about wine. Maybe ask Phil's grandson. Hint, hint. But I don't know exactly how it is. But yeah, we don't go by that today. If anything, the problem today is with grape juice. Not all grape juice is the mahloek between the Bet Yosef and Ashkenazim of dilution of grape juice. So there are some. You'll see next time you look at a grape juice, and it has like a real fancy hashgacha. You'll see that it says can be used for kiddush even according to the Bet Yosef, right? Because the Shulchan Aruch is more machmir about how much wine per water has to be there. There's a famous story that Rav Aviad once came to a wedding and they gave him something and he said, "No, this is water. I'm not using this." So there's a mahloket about that, but I'm not really holding that too much. Yes.
It occurs to me that the whole idea of 4 cups is really a misnomer. Why?
Are you trying to ruin my whole share now?
Yeah. Because they're really only 2 cups. I mean, kiddush is kiddush. Okay. You all make kiddush. That has nothing theoretically nothing to do. And benching. Okay. Those are mitzvot that we would do every day, every week, every whatever. Has nothing to do with Pesach. The only ones that have to do with Pesach are Magid and Hallel. Hallel, you don't make on
you're
wine.
You're right, but at the end,
so there are only really 2 cups of wine.
There are additional 2, but what did we say? Well, that's exactly what we said. And Chachamim came along and said, we're also going to fulfill Derech Cherut tonight by drinking those 4 cups of wine. Meaning, you're right that the original idea was to have 2 cups anyway. But by us establishing them as part of the 4, because we want people to understand that there's an element of Cherut that we're going to celebrate by drinking the 4 cups of wine tonight. There's an additional mitzvah that we're going to gain by drinking the 4 cups of wine. The additional idea is Cherut. By the way, Tosfot says additional mitzvah of simcha. the night of Pesach, which creates a big nafkamina that there might be a special mitzvah of simcha the night of Pesach, which we don't have on Yom Tov usually. Yom Tov, the simcha is only the daytime. This nafkamina might be at night, and some achronim discuss if that's really true, then there would be room to say you should only drink wine and not grape juice. But that's another discussion, not right now. And yes?
So, weaning, is that for all four, or would it be just for the two?
The good question. Of course, I just said now, all four. Why? Thank you very much for that. That's great. If you would be right, then you should only do a seba for Magid and Halal. But according to what we said, their cherut is celebrated in all four. That's why we do a seba in all four. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have to run. Thank you very much, everyone. Litrod. Purim. Chag Sameach, everyone.